Okay, welcome everyone to Tanya Outside In, chapter 31. Okay, hold on to your seats. This is a deep chapter. This is a hard chapter. This is a hard chapter. You know that when I say that, there's some very hard chapters in Tanya, and this is up there in the hardest. Up there in the hardest. Uh,
Which chapter is this?
31.
Okay.
Minei Bay, Abishad bin Nego. Okay. Vehine. If you remember, we've just gone through the character assassination program. Chapter 29 is the character assassination, the self-imposed character assassination that is aimed at breaking the Benoni's um, identification with his good behavior. He plateaued out in that the danger of being a Benoni, as we know, as we learned, is that a Benoni is really in good shape. I mean, he doesn't do any Averas. He doesn't do an Avera in thought, speech, or action, yeah? And he never passes up a mitzvah in thought, speech, or action. So the difference between him and the tzaddik is that the tzaddik doesn't have any personal agenda. The Benoni has a personal agenda and he's putting it to the side the whole time, the whole time. So in a real sense, he's contributing more to reality than the tzaddik, because the tzaddik doesn't really have that fight anymore, at least how we understand it. Yeah. So he's fighting. The Benoni is fighting to serve God, and he's being successful, and that can be a problem. Now, I know personally from my own experience that whenever I do something stupid or feel like less, something happens and I feel either stupid or low or whatever it is, yeah, that's when I always become available to very deep Chedushay Torah. And I know my feeling of where you're holding in your relationship with reality is totally on Chedushay Torah. Yeah, but I know that whenever I do something that I'm not proud of, yeah, then it opens me up to higher levels of reality. So the point is that Kol
Mhm.
Zman you think you're a big tzaddik, yeah, you're in trouble. You should not be. You shouldn't. See now, it comes out with the Tanya. Yeah, the first parak of the first thing he says in Tanya, the very first thing he says is that he brings the mission. It says that Mashpia Oisiti Tzadik Valti Rasha. They make you make a promise before you come down to this world that you're going to be a tzaddik, not a rasha. And if everybody tells you you're a tzaddik, you should think of yourself as a rasha. Yeah? And then they bring from Pirkei Avos, it says you shouldn't think of yourself as a rasha. Okay? That's mamash a Mishnah, a first Mishnah in Avos. Don't see yourself as a rasha. Al a rasha bifnei atzmacha. Don't see yourself as a rasha. But we know that by chapter 13, the Benoni never does well, when you in chapter 11, the definition of a rasha is someone who very occasionally, in the best case scenario, someone who very occasionally will do an avera in thought or speech or action, which means that a rasha is a man who does an avera in thought, let's say once a year. He entertains a bad thought for, for 30 seconds or something, yeah? He's called a rasha. So now you go back to the first chapter, says you shouldn't see yourself as a rasha. But all of us, according to the definition of the Tanya, we're all Rishoyim. I would assume that everybody in this Zoom room, yeah, has at least a entertains, not have a bad thought, that's not a rasha. Entertains a bad thought at least once a year for, 10 seconds.
Gemara says no one is not niksha with lashon hara and avach lashon hara and all those things.
Yeah.
Everyone.
And whoever, very exactly. So it comes out according to the definition of the Tanya. If you want to learn it like on the simplistic level, where it's talking about actual people as opposed to experiences, yeah, then we are all Rishoyim. But the Mishnah says, don't think of yourself as a Rasha. So what's the answer? Don't think of yourself. That's not our. We're not here to done ourselves. That's we're not here to do that. I want to say as well. It says, "Al taden." What is it? Have a done kol adam b'chaf Have a done. Yeah. It says we translate that as judge everybody b'chaf but it says have a done kol adam b'chaf. Why doesn't it say tadoin? Judge everybody b'chaf It says have a done. It says be. Have is be done b'chaf schus. I wanted to say that dunning b'chaf schus is a bidi evid. And vadai, if you're going to judge, yeah, you'll judge b'chaf schus, not b'chaf choiv. But ideally, you don't want to judge. So the Mishnah says have a dam b'chaf schus means be in the experience of dam b'chaf schus, but don't judge anyone, especially yourself. And that's where that's what we're trying to that is a very important clause in Sefer Tanya is it's about moving and working out where to go, not trying to work out who I am. That's a very important idea of letting go of trying to work out who you are. Because then you can't talk about who you are. Like we've said so many times, you can discuss the iris, yeah, you can discuss the iris endlessly, but there's nothing to say about the pupil. And that's who you are. That's who you are. If you want to learn about your name, if you want to write out your name and discuss your name, okay. But that's not who you are. That's what you've got a name. You're not a name, you have a name. So so yeah, so now the danger that the Benoni has to guard himself against is dunning himself, judging himself kind of quite rightly as a very righteous person. The minute you've defined yourself as a righteous person, yeah, it's basically the same as any other kind of identification. In fact, but it's actually worse because other identifications, if you have a minute to think about them, you realize they're ridiculous. If you're identified with your $30 million home in Beverly Hills, or your $500 million property portfolio in Manhattan, yeah, and you realize all it takes is just it just takes a wildfire, doesn't it, in LA, and you realize that that was ridiculous. The fact that you identified with your house, oof, gone, finished. Yeah, and it just takes one burst of the economic bubble to see all your stocks in Wall Street just down. But what about when you're identified with the fact that you're really a very good guy, that you're a really, you're a good man. Yeah, that's more dangerous because that's probably not going to crumble unless you do something stupid. Yeah, but if you're really on the ball, maybe you're not going to do anything stupid. And you've got everyone else telling you, wow, you're a big tzaddik, you're so great, you're this, you're that, yeah. It's the set you're stuck in the same prison as the guy who is identified with his multi-million-dollar home in Bel Air. Same prison. And you're going to be blocked and stifled, and that's called Timtum Alev. So
So what's the healthier alternative?
the healthy alternative is to let go of self-definition.
Hmm.
I'm here to help. I'm not here to define myself. Just show me what to do. Hashem, show me. I don't care about me. Show me what to do. Let me know what you want from me. And why do I need to know? I need to know my koichus, but I don't need to define myself. You need to know what you've got available to you. Yeah, that's your resources. If you don't know what resources you have available to you, well, then you're going to be worth, very little of what a fraction of what you're really worth, of what help you can provide. So you need to know your resources. You need to know your skills, your talents, your weaknesses, but you don't need to define yourself. Like, you with me? Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah.
Can I share something?
Like, yeah, go on.
My neighbor behind me lost their house in the Pacific Palisades fire. The wife is in her upper 80s, the husband's in his mid 90s. They lost everything, everything. They had whatever clothes they were wearing outside of the house. Nothing. Decades and decades and decades. She is one of the happiest people I know, always singing and
Wait,
smiling.
now or because
Now, I didn't know her before.
I don't know.
Now, I didn't know her before. Now, she has family that visits her. She appreciates her husband. She appreciates her family. She appreciates her life that she has, even though they lost everything.
Yeah, she was an artist too, right, Michael? Didn't she have all her artwork there?
She was an artist and she wants to start painting again. She lost all her original artwork, everything.
Wow.
That reminds me of a story that Stephen Covey says. Two men were standing at the funeral of a very, very wealthy man, and one of them turns around to the other one and says, "So how much did he leave?" And the other turns back to him and says, "All of it. Got to let go one day, man. Got to let go of everything, everything. It's all." It's all yeah, you have to let go of everything. They had a but that's a big sluice in a sense that I mean they're very elderly now, and that is because that is the pain of Gehenna. The pain of Gehenna is letting go of all the identifications that you got sucked into. That's the disentanglement that's very painful. As we know, that's called Shir Salev. When you thought you were, I give this example as a photographer, yeah. I was a top photographer, and when you come across a photographer who's better than you, when your whole definition is photographer, top photographer, and then you come across a guy who is, or even more difficult, you come across a girl who's objectively a better photographer than you just want to like die. You just want to curl up in a ball and you feel horrible. That's going to be the pain of letting go of all of these Nourishkeit Dicker identifications that we have. So the most dangerous definition of all of the definitions is that I'm a tzaddik. Not the real tzaddik. The Benoni would never call himself the real tzaddik, but the Benoni looks super impressive. The guy never does an Avera. In thought, speech, or action, he only does mitzvahs, yeah? He probably looks very impressive, and everybody's telling him he's a big tzaddik and this and that, yeah? So once he becomes identified with that, that's what the Rebbe is worried about. And the Rebbe says it happens, and he gives you the advice of how to do it, where he talks basically about telling yourself you're really not that great and going through, 2.5 pages, through nearly 4 pages, which in the Tanya is massive. 1, 2, 3, nearly 5 pages. Yeah, for the Tanya to give 5 pages to something is huge. Yeah, so he gives 5 pages of how to break yourself down. Don't think you're so great. Yeah, you're not so great. Even if you're not doing Averas, yeah, like where are you holding your dreams? Yeah, oh, your dreams are full of shtuyot. That's not a good sign. Yeah, what about stuff you did when you were a kid, where you think that just goes away? Yeah, tshuva's endless processes. Yeah, and then what about things like you say brachas all the time with kavana, and except your mum's wringing yourself out when you're davening, you're squeezing yourself like a rag. Yeah, just keep it in perspective. You're not as great as you think you are, and that is the painful process of the disidentification, which we said over and over is called Masech Das. So that was chapter 29. Then chapter 30 was then he basically goes a step further and says, now that you've kind of disentangled yourself from this false, this delusional, this delusional conceptual label that you've put on yourself as being a tzaddik. Now the next step is to realize that you're actually lower than everybody else. Yeah, he says, "V'havei shafar ruach bifnei kol ha'adam." That's again from others. Yeah, think of yourself as lower than kol ha'adam, which includes all human beings, not just Yisrael. That's what he says, and then he goes through how you can do that, etc. And so now we're standing at chapter Lamed Aleph. Okay, so let's jump in. V'hinei, af im k'shiyaricha be'lamik be'inyanim hanal. If you get really involved in understanding everything that we've just spoken about, all this kind of very negative character assassination, yeah, which by the way, the Lubavitcher Rebbe I heard in the name from Rav Shais Taub say that these chapters aren't for us anymore. We don't do this kind of avoider in this generation. Anyway, but I'm still reading what he says. But in Yanim Hanal, Kasha Ushtayim Liois Benemuchas Ruach Velev Nishba, that you spend some time thinking about these ideas and you get to a place of Nemuchas Ruach, Velev Nishba. Yeah, Lev Nishba is the technical term for disidentification. When a person is experiencing a Lev Nishba, it means that they have had their identity smashed somehow. If a guy was very rich and he meets somebody much, much richer, yeah, which that must happen to people all the time because no one's like the richest guy in the world. So the richest people, and they get defined by how rich they are. Yeah, when they meet that guy who's worth twice what they're worth, it must be really difficult to deal with if they're defined by their money. But however it is, if you're defined by your sense of humor and you meet someone funnier, or you're defined by your kindness and you meet someone kinder, or you're defined by your intellect and you meet someone cleverer, etc. All of these things, that feeling that I described, if you're a top photographer, you meet a better photographer, that feeling that you experience where you realize you're not the top photographer, there's a better photographer than you, that's called Lev Nishba. That's called Shvir Salev. Okay. If you do this, you're going to come to a great depression. He says, Loi Yochosh, do not worry. Now, it's important to understand that Atzvus is not Tame, yeah, it's from Klipas Noiga, meaning it's, well, let's keep going and explain. V'lo mitzad kedusha is not kadosh. Yeah, atzvus is not kadosh. It's from the intermediate klipa, which means it could go either way. Ki mitzad kedusha k'siv oiz v'chedva b'makoyma, because kedusha is simcha. Yeah, v'ein shechina shreya elematoich simcha, and the shechina, and that is the definition of kedusha, is hashras shechina. What is the prerequisite for hashras shechina? What can't the Shechina be?
Simcha.
So
and not Gaiva.
Yeah, that's it. The Gaiva is the Ikka. The more you are, the less the Shechina can come in. Yeah, that's the Ikka. And then Simcha is a close second after that. So Shechina's only show Simcha, v'chein the Dava Halacha. And that's the Dava Halacha is the Inyan of Bittul, yeah? Now, what about now? Why does it mean Atzvus is from Klipas Noiga? What about if I'm really depressed that, like, I'll bring in Yitzi, if you don't mind, a personal attack on you, Yitzi, if that's okay. But he passed the test, so it's good. If you look behind Yitzi, yeah, you'll see his cabinet there, yeah, that he spent a lot of money on. And the builder, the carpenter, was meant to leave the sides cut down. So yeah, you see, he left like what? How much is that? 15, 20 centimeters of wood that shouldn't have been there.
I don't know centimeters, but let's say half a foot.
6 inches, yeah? 6 inches of wood that shouldn't have been there. And that has cut out a lot of light from Yitz's study. And let's say, yeah, Yitz is a big tzaddik, so he was able to smile it off. But you could imagine a lesser person than Yitzi Katz. Imagine him moping around thinking, I spent thousands of dollars on these cabinets, and the idiot carpenter has stolen, however many, however many lumens of light from my thing, because he got the thing wrong, yeah. And the guy falls, and the guy falls into Atzvus. That's mamash klipas Timaeus. There's nothing holy about that. That's completely like the guy who has the worst day in his life because they gave him the wrong trim on the leather in his BMW. Yeah, wrong color. He got the green trim as opposed to the red trim. Yeah, whatever it was. Yeah, and the guy's walking around distraught in Atzvus. That's completely klipas Timaeus. So what does it mean that it comes from klipas noiga? When the Atzvus is memili dishmaya. That's called klipas noiga. When you feel that you are underachieving in your Yiddishkeit, when you feel that you could be doing better, and because of that you feel a bit down, that is different. That is qualitatively different from being down because the carpenter messed up the order and you've got less light in your study. The fact that you feel that you should be a better person and you're down because of that, that's called the Atzvus coming from Klipas Noiga. It's still Klipas Noiga, it's not Kadosh, but it's now it's available to be elevated. When a person is down because of the fact that the carpenter's messed up, yeah, that can't really be elevated. You have to get away from that. But when a person feels down because he's not performing on a ruchnius level like he feels he should be, now that can be converted into positive energy to pull yourself up and to start and to get your act together. It's clear?
Yeah, just to fill everybody in on the story, just so I can be clear on the story here with my space here. I spent a down payment 50. The whole thing was $20,000 for this thing. By the way, I price checked it with somebody who does this stuff. I said I got a good deal, so I don't feel so bad saying I spent this much. I put $10,000 down. It was supposed to be a certain way. It wasn't. It didn't come out the proper way, and I was holding the last $10,000 because it wasn't the right way. And I called it up, Shmuel, what should I do? And you said to me it was going to be the best $10,000 that I spent. Spend it, don't let it bother you, and move on. So I did appreciate that.
Good. Good.
Chazak.
But by the way, Yitzi, I told you about that light in my kitchen. You know how they missed the, and every time I'm walking now, the whole thing has like gone. So now we have to replace it. And the question is if I'm going to fill up that final, that final meter and a half, or just leave it off. Anyway, this is really important. Like this is just so important that when your car gets scratched, yeah, you should not care. You should look at it and think, oh, it's Haval that it doesn't look so nice, but I don't care. It's not important to me. It's not going to bring me down. None of this stuff should bring you down. None of it, because like Mike was saying with this lady, this old lady, she had everything taken away from her. Yeah. What? And you've had a teeny bit of paint from the bottom left corner of your car taken away from you, and you're pulling your hair out, yeah? The whole thing, it's like all of these things, whenever something like that goes wrong, Eliba de MS, it's the best thing that could happen. It's so much better when things don't go to plan than when they do go to plan for you. It really is. When you can work through it and put it in perspective and say to yourself, you know what? It's really not such a big deal. It's really not such a big deal. That's fantastic. When someone buys you a gift and it's not right. Yeah. But you could deal with it. It's just not what you were thinking. It's not what you wanted, yeah? And you deal with it and you smile and you put it in perspective and you're like, this is fine, I'll be fine with this, thank you very much. You moved so far those things that is growth. That is moving. That's really what it's about. I mean, imagine if imagine if you're connected to a great person and you saw him freak out like over, something didn't go his way. Like he got a scratch on his car, he got a parking ticket, and the guy's going nuts. You wouldn't respect that from a person. That's not a respectable behavior. You would expect a great person to say, gums at the table. Okay, we'll go over this. Baruch Hashem.
I'm just curious on the parsha. I know this is a totally left field question, but when Yaakov goes back for these jugs, whatever it is, and like it's like, why is he going back? Why does he care so much? Like he's got his stuff, he's got his family. Why go back? I'm just trying to plug it in here.
Pachim Katanim.
Yeah.
They say those are the pachim of the shemen for Hanukkah.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay,
that's a nice word. That's a nice word. But the mice the Gemara says from this that tzaddikim are chas on their money.
Okay.
So what do you do with that? Maisa, that's Ratzon Hashem.
Sometimes
you have to do that.
No, well, see, chas on their money is not a steer to what I'm saying. Chas on their money doesn't mean that they'll freak out when their BMW gets scratched. Chas on their money means that they treat their possessions with a lot of kavod, which is how you should treat your possessions. You should treat your possessions with a lot of kavod, and you should treat everything with a lot of kavod, everything, and you shouldn't waste money. That's not the idea of that's not what we're talking about here, B'chlal. Anyway, so that's called. So when the Atzvos is memili d'shmaya, meaning things of heaven, means ruchnias things, where you feel like you're not performing how you should be performing, that's not holy, but it's not treif. It's middle, okay? It's still selfish, but it's good selfish in a sense. Hima b'chinas toiv shebenoiga. That's called the toiv in the noiga. Okay, ulechein kasav Arizal, sha'afilu daigus ha'avoinus. The Arizal says that the only daigers you should have is at the time even daigers of avoinus is only at the time of vidui, v'loi b'shas tefillah, not when you're davening for Talmud Torah. Sheichloima tzrichem liyois b'simcha shemitzad kedusha dafka. That when you are involved in tefillah and Torah, it needs to be b'simcha. So when you do something wrong, don't let it eat you up. Move on, okay? And set aside a specific time where you will think about it, but don't allow it to invade your thought. Don't let it overtake you. Because we know Avera Gereris Avera, and the lower you feel, I thought about this, a very passionate vor, but a very, very deep vor, by Esav, when he gave his the Bechorah to Yaakov. It says he was ayef twice. It says he was tired. Yeah, that is when most of the averas take place. When you're tired. When you're tired, you're low energy. You don't have good judgment. You don't have any discipline. You don't have. Most bad stuff happens when you're of low energy.
B'machshava or b'maaseh? Or both?
No, Lamaisa, Lamaisa. Just you let go. You lose control when you're tired. I know that goes for me. When you don't have the energy. I saw a lovely someone sent me a really nice little video of looks like some choshev guy who was saying you want the silver bullet to wipe up nearly all of your bad behavior. Yeah, I'll send it. I'll put it out on the Bnei Aliyah, Bli Neder.
Workout.
He said, go to bed early. Go to bed early. He said, after 12 o'clock at night. He said, what? He said, when are all the bad decisions made? At 2 p.m. or 2 a.m.? When do you get yourself into the most trouble? 2 p.m. or 2 a.m.? He was saying that after a certain time, your levels of judgment fall, and you just become less effective. So he says, just go to bed early. Just go to bed early. That's what he says. It's very clever what he said. But anyway, that's a side point. But the point is that when you're carrying around the burden of something that you've done wrong and it's mummish in your mind the whole time, then there's no good that comes from that. That just depresses you and it drags you down. It makes you more susceptible to Averas, which drags you down further and further. So the Rebbe here is saying in the Shem of the Arizal, set aside a specific time, and that's when you need to think about your Averas. Don't, and he says vidui, otherwise don't carry them with you. Keep moving forward. Even so, that even so, this is the way to defeat, so to speak, the situation. Now, he's going to explain. And it's a very famous thing. Ukumarzal, Mineu Bay Abeshadid Bay Nargo. The handle for the axe comes from the forest. Yeah, he got this from Matisyo. That the handle from the axe comes from the forest, and he explains, Upagaboy Kyotsivoy, and I'm not sure what that means. Okay. Va'alze ne'emar b'chol eiz v'yem moisa v'hayisroin he has simcha ba'acha ha'eizev k'lekaman, that there is no benefit from this atzvus except for the simcha that comes after it.
Yeah.
No?
Yafeh.
Yeah. Ach be'emes, however, ein lev. Oh no, so that's the thing. But the point is that when you're in that position of a down. Well, let's see. Ach be'emes, however, in truth, ein lev nishba u'merivas nefesh al richukim me'or pnei Hashem. However, when you're genuinely feeling distant from Hashem and you're bitter about that, when you're bitter about the fact that you feel that you're underperforming in your avodas Hashem, he said in Lashon HaKodesh that's not called atzvus, that's called shviras halev. Ki atzvus he, or meriras halev. Ki atzvus he sheliboy matumtam ke'evan. When a person is depressed, his heart is hard like a stone and blocked up like a stone. There is no emotion. Definition of atzvus in Sefer Tanya, as I've learned from my Rebbe, is not atzvus. Depression is not an emotion. It's a lack thereof and an inability to experience emotion. It is a vacuum of emotion, not a negative emotion. It's the inability, or even in some sense, the laziness, or the what's it called? When you deny yourself. When you deny yourself, what's the word for that?
Abstain.
Yeah, maybe that's what I'm thinking. Either way, it could be a purposeful blocking of emotion. A depression can be actually put on by a person, or it can also be chemical as well. But in Tanya, the word atzvus means that you're not available to emotion. Your lave is blocked up. And simcha is also not really an emotion. Simcha is an availability to emotion. So a person who is besimcha, if he finds out that someone close to him was nifta, will mourn very deeply. Whereas a person who's be'atzvus won't be able to mourn. Mourning is an emotion, or mourning is an experience of, it's an emotional experience, let's say. It's not really an emotion according to Tanya, but simcha and mourning are very much bound up with each other. Like you have the shiva of when someone's nifta, and you have the sheva brachas of a chasna, and all the halachas of Avelis and simcha are merged with each other in Moed Katan, in Masechtas Moed Katan, and there's lots and lots of connections. They're really kind of two sides of the same coin, but they're both opposite of Atzvus. Atzvus is an inability or a lacking of the ability to experience emotion, and Simcha and Aveilus also are an openness to emotion. The ein chias beliboy, or ein chayas beliboy, that is what Atzvus is that there's no life in the heart. Aval merirus, v'leiv nishba, but what about merirus alev, the bitterness of heart and a broken heart? Adarabba. Harish chias beliboy, there is a lot of energy in the heart, a lot of life in the heart. Lispao, lismame, to do and to be bitter. Rakshi chias Mebechinas Gvurus Kedoshus. It's from that's called a Velus. Marius Alev and his Marmer. It's also from Lashon Marius Alev. That is when the heart is alive. When somebody is mourning, yeah, their heart is absolutely alive. It just hurts. It just hurts. Where someone's besimcha, their heart is absolutely alive and it feels good, because that's from chasadim. And Avelis is from the Gvuras. But Timtum Alev, Atzvus it's the heart is not alive. So he won't be able to be Besimcha, he won't be able to be Misabel also. He's just not available. The Asimcha begins Chasadim. Ki Alev Klalu Mishtehem, because the Lev is koilel of Chasadim and Gvuras. So Atzvus, so Marius Alev happens like in the left side of the heart, and Simchas Alev happens in the right side of the heart. But I think let's hold here. That's a good place to hold. To be continued. B'ezrat Hashem.
Zaku Baruch.
Shkoyach.
Thanks.
Okay, everyone will be B'kesher. Chazak v'yamas.